Item 4, work sessions. A, Planning Commission update, Mr. Petroski and Mr. Gillies.
Good afternoon, Board. Chair Engel and Vice Chair Miller, the rest of the Board of Supervisors, Dr. Casey, and I'll acknowledge Jeff Minks too, since you're here with us. And I know you're as valuable to this body as Rob Robinson is to our Planning Commission, so I want to include you. We're going to kick off our presentation with Director Gillies starting off, and then I'll close us out.
Thank you, Frank. It's good to be back. And we had a very busy and productive 2024. During that period of time, we were able to do 6 zoning amendments. We did 82 zoning cases, of which 79 of them were recommended for approval and had some sort of approval process, and then 3 that were with denial. We had 26 deferrals, 2 substantial accord cases, and we had 2 site plan reviews that were attested. So it was a pretty busy year for us from that perspective. We do, as you can see on the screen here, we went paperless and went totally digital for our annual report this year. We were finding that we really weren't passing those out very much if we printed a lot of them. And so we've gone to a full digital format for that. Hopefully that was usable for you all. You could click on that and pull it up and have that report before you. It is on our webpage if you want to go back later and see it. It'll be there all year. In addition to those things that we did, let me see here. We have 2 ongoing comprehensive plan projects going on. They're both corridor plans that we're doing. One is the Route 60 plan, basically, that we're doing, which is about a 4-mile section that's both in the Midlothian district and in the Clover Hill district. That Eastern 60 corridor plan, we've started some of the shareholder meetings and so forth and developed some basic concepts for that. We've put a bit of a pause on that until we could kind of get through the ZOMOD and comprehensive plan updates and the subdivision ordinance things we need to get done this summer and early fall, and then we'll be kind of kick it into high gear for the Eastern 60 corridor plan for the rest of 25. The Northern Route 10 corridor plan, we're currently working through. We're having a work session before the Planning Commission in May, and then bringing it for a public hearing in June. So you'll be probably hearing that back in July of this year. You'll be seeing the final product for that Northern Route 10 project. That's about a 3.5-mile section between Route 10, from 150 all the way up to 288, that kind of section of Route 10 that needs some work. In addition to that, in 2024, we got a NACO award for our Ridgedale the special focus area plan that we did. If you remember that, it's in the Dale District, and I think was a really good plan that's showing kind of a mixed-use development in one of the quarters there, and then some residential on the other sides and so forth. Obviously, the NACO Awards Committee thought it was worthwhile recommending and giving us an award for. Of the 3 special focus area plans we've done thus far, we've won 2 awards. One was a state award through the APA for the Rockwood Special Focus Area Plan, and then this one we've got for the Ridgedale Plan. So I think we're on a hot streak, I guess, for getting good smaller plans put together. And the 2 corridor plans will be our first attempt to try to do longer, kind of linear studies for Chesterfield County. In addition to that, let's see, this thing's just not working too well. Thanks to the General Assembly and DEQ, we were mandated to take care of some amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding environmental engineering or environmental issues, as well as some procedural things. So unfortunately, these were needed to be done in 2024. We couldn't wait and kind of just fold them into future ZOMOD. They had to be done during '24, so we moved forward with these 6 amendments and got them through. I'm not going to go through the explanation of all those, but they did take some time and effort to get those folded into the current zoning ordinance. And then, as you all know, we are in the thick of it for ZOMOD. In 2024, staff and the Planning Commission really rolled up their sleeves and really got into digging into draft 2 of ZOMOD and really going through it section by section, trying to make sure we've got things right and the way everybody thought we should lay it out. There were quite a few changes between draft 1 and draft 2. Draft 2 was really the one we spent a lot of time on. For example, the Planning Commission, we had 8 work sessions during '24 and was about 27 plus hours that went into those work sessions, going through not page by page, but at least section by section on the ZOMOD draft 2, and I think came up with a good final product. We did the same thing with the ZOMOD Advisory Committee, having 7 meetings with them and at least 13 hours of meeting time with them and looking at their comments and so forth. And then at the suggestion of you all, we included, the Committee for the Future as part of our kind of shareholder group for the ZOMOD project, and we had 9 meetings with them and over 18 hours of dialogue with them on ZOMOD. So I think, and that doesn't count the thousands of hours of staff time that we spent looking at comments that came in on our portal, our specific portal for ZOMOD, as well as meeting with special interest groups and so forth as to what revisions and editing was necessary for ZOMOD. So all that was kind of completed by November of '24, and then we kind of closed the door and huddled and started editing and making draft 3. And so in all of winter of '24 and early part of '25, we were creating draft 3, and then in March of this year, we released draft 3. And draft 3 is what we're taking out to the general public and reviewing in all the community meetings. We have it out online on our web page, and are really working on what changes we need to do from draft 3 to hopefully the final draft or draft 4 of ZOMOD. Currently, we're in the midst of the community meetings. We've had some really productive sessions. We've done 5 so far. We've got 1 more in Bermuda next week. And we had a great turnout last night at the Midlothian one with, I think, over 50 people showing up and a lot of good questions and conversations with that. I think overall the sentiment's been pretty positive with what ZOMOD has in it and the concepts we're trying to include with that new document. And we feel pretty good moving forward with that. We had, because of the number of postcards and so forth that we're eventually going to have to send out for the public hearing, the Planning Commission last month went ahead and set the public hearing date for ZOMOD for July 15th for the Planning Commission. And if all goes well with that, you all may see it at a public hearing for the September board meeting. So that we're still on kind of the schedule that we had talked about a year or 2 ago, or for the last year or so, as to kind of the schedule for trying to get ZOMOD across the goal line in fall of 2025. And then just to kind of remind you all, once that, God willing, gets approved, then we would have the rest of the fall and the winter to train up staff and make sure we have kind of everything in place from technical standpoint. The actual enactment of the ordinance would be, at your pleasure, but we would assume it would be probably January of 2026, or possibly February if you feel there needs to be extra time or so forth. But that will be part of what we bring up to you in the public hearing in September or October for the final stretch of this. And once it's adopted, then starting in 2026 is when we would really start working on the future use of that document. With that, I'm going to stop talking and let Frank kind of go over some of the activity we've had for the last year.
Thank you, Director Gillies. And now that we're halfway through our presentation, I should probably take a moment to introduce myself to those who are watching. My name is Frank Petroski. I'm the Commissioner for the Midlothian District and this year's Chair. And my Vice Chair, Gibb Sloan, could not be here this evening, but he's been a great partner for the last 2 years as we've been Chair and Vice Chair. So Director Gillies is filling in for Gibb Sloan, doing me the favor. And I do want to touch on the ZOMOD one note. All of those 24 meetings and countless hours, that was just 2024. That was the 5th year of working on ZOMOD. So I just want to draw attention to that. As we're in our 6th year on ZOMOD, I do echo Director Gillies' comments that while it may not be perfect, after 6 years, I'm hoping it's good enough and that we will pass it and forever make amendments to it because it is a living document. So I just want to stress that those numbers were just one of the past 5 years of staff's time on this and everybody's time on this and the countless outreach for ZOMOD. Getting into the zoning level, this slide's important, I think, because it's hard to know what goes into a zoning case if people from the outside just see it comes to your board and you have a presentation, you vote, and you move on. It seems the perception can be that you're just hearing a case and, okay, good, we're moving on. But the reality is the sausage making that goes into that for usually years before it comes before this body. And even before this slide, I will say the 302 zoning opinions, those are formal requests that are made to staff, and every department in the county will sit down and go over their request before they even submit their application. But before those zoning opinions, as planning commissioner, it's countless how many times people will just reach out to me, hey, I own this piece of land, I'm thinking about doing this. We had a few just this week that were informal inquiries about what they might be able to do with land, which doesn't even count into the zoning opinions. So really that 302 down to 160 down to 103, that is also just scratching the surface of the number of zoning, I guess, requests, if you will, that do get filtered out through the process. And then, so in 2024, the Board of Supervisors, our Planning Commission have recommended approval, and this Board of Supervisors approved 79 cases of those 300 plus that we worked on last year. And 19 residential, 46 non-residential, 2 second dwelling or 2 family dwelling, and then amendments to previously approved cases. Oftentimes they're approved so long ago that they need to come back through and just be somewhat modernized to meet the needs of today. Here's the breakdown by type, and I know it's also somewhat alarming to people to see, wow, half of them were multifamily and only 28% single family, 22 townhomes. And I do like to point out that we, for Chesterfield County for about a century, was almost exclusively single family. So this is us really playing catch up to finding that balance, because any healthy community is going to have to be a balanced community. So while in 2024, the numbers are obviously skewed, you can see that. But if you look holistically at the county, we have been lacking in alternative housing types that are not just your traditional single family, condos, townhomes, apartments, those types of values. So if we really want to have a diverse community, then we're going to need to have a diverse housing stock. So this is Chesterfield, again, trying to find that healthy balance for a healthy community. And then this is the breakdown of the non-residential types. It's often modifying development standards, some commercial uses, businesses at the home, RVs, special events, solars. solar farms. A lot of this, not all of it, but much of this, because these have to come through as zoning cases, 46 of them, Zomod is looking to fix a lot of this because these are coming through asking for exceptions or special uses that the planning commission, the board, the staff, even the community think these are good uses, but because they don't fit into our outdated zoning ordinance, they do have to come through this process. So we're hoping that Zomod will greatly reduce this number because these numbers that we're showing today have been pretty consistent. I'm in my 6th year and all of these numbers, give or take, they're pretty close to what they are every year. But we're hoping when Zomod passes that a lot of these numbers are going to decrease because we're not kind of fighting against our own outdated ordinance. And then here's a breakdown by magisterial district. Again, that's a pretty healthy split. And even if you look at those scattered dots, it's a pretty healthy spread across the county. So there's revitalization going on. There's housing, there's businesses. We as a holistic county, you can see there, staff is doing a really good job of not spending all their attention on just the one area that might be hot. They're making sure that every corridor is receiving comprehensive planning and proper zoning attention. So we're really trying to make sure that the county thrives as a whole and every magisterial district is working together. And with that, we had 12 once-a-month public hearing and work sessions. We had 70 zoning case community meetings, and those are, again, once it has the zoning opinion and then the staff review, and then it comes, before it comes to the planning commission, most cases we hold 1, 2, sometimes 3 community meetings. And that is an informal meeting that does not take place here or in the public hearing room. That is just an opportunity for the applicants to get out there in the community, usually at a school or a church or some kind of community center, or these days even virtually, Teams, Zoom, whatever we feel will be most convenient for those we want to be engaging with on these meetings, to come out and learn about the project early on, to try to help us put in the proper conditions and make sure that the case is being worked even before it gets to the formal public hearing. And then the community meetings on comprehensive plan and ordinance amendments, again, that's just the bookends, where do we want the county to be in decades, and then what are the rules of the road to get it there so that the zoning cases have that guidance of where we want to be as a county. And then just looking ahead, in 2025, we really are hoping to tie a bow around Zomod. Would love to spend my first 6 years on the commission on Zomod and then maybe the last 2 on something non-Zomod. That'd be great. And most of what you see here, aside from the special area plans, the Eastern 60 corridor, the Route 10 corridor, and the Western 60, those are the plans that we're going to continue to work on. But the others are really just bringing the comprehensive plan and the rest of the ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, in line with Zomod. So we're now going to have our new rules. Well, now let's make sure that the comprehensive plan is guiding development to follow those rules. And again, it's a living document. It's just, we are forever going to be modifying the ordinance and the comprehensive plan and just making sure that these documents are living and growing as Chesterfield County is living and growing. So with that, I do want to, again, thank the Board of Supervisors for all your support. I really, not just Supervisor Miller, obviously the person who had the confidence in appointing me and supporting me, but all 5 of the board members. I really cannot thank you enough. Every single one of you has been supportive my entire time here, really looking out for our commission, taking care of us. And then we get this support from the other side. Staff has been fantastic. Director Gillies' team. It's just, it just keeps getting better and better, and I thoroughly enjoy working with staff. They are professionals. They are passionate about what they do. And my fellow planning commissioners, it's just a great team to work with, and I've enjoyed every minute of this job. So thank you. I'll open it up to questions.
Board members, any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Or comments?
Frank, thank you very much for all of the hard work that you do. We know that a lot of people in the community know what a planning commission is, but they don't necessarily know all of the additional things that a planning commission is required to do. I'd ask if we could go back a couple of slides to the number 46 that you had right there. So non-residential by type, and one of the things that you said was that once we fix ZOMOD, that we probably wouldn't have as many of these cases. But I want to clarify something, because there's a perception to believe that we're trying to change the code so that someone would not have to go through a zoning case, right? But the truth of the matter is, for example, if there's an agricultural piece of land and someone brings forward a zoning case for one of these things you're talking about, well, they're still going to have to go through a case to get it zoned, right? They're still going to have to go through it. ZOMOD's not going to go, okay, we're going to take this piece of property and we're going to change it to this, right?
Yes. So as always, it's complex. So what you just described is 100% accurate. A lot of these cases are not true rezonings. They're really just conditional use. Like the RV is a great example, because we just had two of those recently, where somebody wants to park the RV on the side of their house rather than behind their house. And currently they come through and we say, well, you have to screen it and you have to do this, and you have to prove it can't be in the back. Those types of conditional uses, the plan would be, as long as they're doing all of those things, then they don't have to spend all the money and months of time to come through and get a conditional use or a zoning case just to park their RV on the side of their house. So there's a variety of reasons why they would come through, and your example absolutely will remain a zoning action.
Right. And I want people to understand that, because some people think that we're trying to make it so that, you don't have to go through any zoning cases, right? Because we're going to designate all the parcels and say, well, this parcel's already designated for this, so you can just do it. And that's not what ZOMOD is. And then once we're done with ZOMOD, then we're going to have to go back and look at the comprehensive plan, as you said, and look at those parcels throughout the county, and take what we've put together as an ordinance and said, okay, these are the types of uses now that we feel are good to grow our community in the future. And then we'll look at a parcel of land and say, okay, in this card, let's use a 360 card, or western part of Hull Street, and say, this is what everything currently is zoned for, is proposed to be zoned for if applied through the comprehensive plan. Do we still think that these uses that are proposed in the comprehensive plan in section 10 are the appropriate uses that we want to allow for in the future? And if we decide to change that, for example, if there's a parcel of land alongside the southern section of Hull Street that's currently zoned or proposed to be zoned, it's agricultural, but it could be used for suburban residential too, we may turn around and say, well, we actually, looking at that now, don't want it to be suburban residential too. We want it actually to be a business zone, right? So, because we want to have more businesses along that section of Hull Street, and we have water and sewer to be able to do it in that section. So homes along Hull Street in that section may not be the best use. And then, so when we look at that, we go, okay, if we're not going to put homes, then what commercial uses are available? And that's when you go to ZOMOD and you look at it and go, okay, this is the host of commercial opportunities we have. This is what we should propose. And then it'll come out to the community for the community to have input on all that. And what I articulating, is that kind of correct to where we're going?
Yes, absolutely. And it's clear that, like me, since you started serving in 2020, you've been paying attention to this, because that's exactly the direction we're heading. And you're clearly engaged and trying to understand it, and you are understanding it, and that's what we're trying to articulate.
And I appreciate everything you've done, because it's a big lift, believe it or not, to get this out to the community, to get them to understand it. Because when people drive around and they see our community growing, and it has been growing, they look at it and go, oh, it's terrible. Look at all this growth. Well, a lot of the things coming out of the ground we know were approved years ago, and we know some of those things that we have approved too. Based on what was in what's been applied, almost every case is conditional use that comes before us, almost every one. And the reason every case is conditional use is because our ordinance is outdated, way outdated. And so that things that are being proposed in modern building developments don't fit what our ordinance has. But that doesn't mean that some of the things that we currently have shouldn't exist, or some of the things we used to have. For example, one of the things we're putting back in ZOMOD is R7, which was taken out years ago. Deer Run, as an example, was an R7 neighborhood where you had quarter-acre lots with beautiful houses. They were not big, 14, 15, 1,600 square feet, but we went away from building that type of development in the county years ago. And we're not saying that we're going to absolutely do that, but what we're saying is it could be an opportunity in the future if a developer decided to do that. And so we're trying to put together a host of ways that a proposal could come before the community to be considered for modern growth. Is that, I think, hopefully that's
That's exactly.
that's what
Absolutely.
we're trying to get in the message to the community. This isn't about what some people think, for us to be able to rubber stamp every zoning case that comes through or make it easier for everybody to get a zoning case through. However, what people don't understand is when you talk about affordability, which is a relative term, the more time it takes for something to go through the process, the more money has to be spent to get it there by the developer, by the builder, and that cost, they don't just eat it, they pass it along to the customer, which means the cost of every lot and everything that's being built goes up because of engineering fees, because of fees that they have to pay to us, water and sewer connection fees, proffers, attorney's fees, a lot of those, right? So all of that gets passed along to the customer. And we're not trying to make it easier, but we're trying to not make it as difficult as it is either, because it's part of, if you can go another jurisdiction, I'm not going to pick one, but if you can go another jurisdiction in Virginia and you don't have to go through as much red tape as we've created, then it'll cost less to build the house over there than it's costing here, strictly because of built-in costs that we've put in as a government. And all we're trying to do is make sure that when our community grows in the future, we have a great list of products that could be available for the community.
It's incredibly well said, and if I may use an analogy, because my day job is not land development, it's software
Mine neither.
development. Yeah, exactly.
And I didn't stay at Holiday Inn Express last night.
Spot on. So, I'll attempt, you made me think of an analogy between ZOMOD and AI. I'll go there. So ZOMOD, much like AI, it's not designed to remove the human from the process. This isn't going to be like, oh, now ZOMOD's going to do it all. We don't need these bodies anymore. Absolutely not. ZOMOD, whether it's AI, it's there to augment us, to make our jobs easier and to empower us to have stronger tools to do more with our time, more productive use of our time, and do much better things than we could before we had those tools. So ZOMOD is a tool to empower this body. It's not a tool to replace this body by any means.
Yeah.
So kind of, Frank, walk me through it a little bit. So.
AI or this?
Both. So if you have farm animals, somebody wants farm animals on their property. What would typically occur is there'd be some sort of a conditional use permit, and then once that occurs, we would talk about it, identify it, and then make a decision, yea or nay, as to whether they can bring farm animals onto a property. How is it going to be applied under ZOMOD now?
So, and I will, if the articulars want to say that, but the farm animals example that's up there, that I don't think is changing in ZOMOD. You're still going to have your agricultural land and you're going to have your residential land. And if you want to have a farm animal in a residential district, you are still going to Supervisor Carroll's point, you're going to come through the exact same process. You're going to have to ask for that permission because, correct, except for the 6 chickens, no roosters. So this won't change that specific use. Agriculture will still be agricultural, residential will still be residential when it comes to farm animals.
Let's kind of go through this, because you had mentioned, all right, there's 46 non-residential cases, that some of them we wouldn't need to even deal with. So let's choose another one, solar. How would it be different under ZOMOD when it comes to solar?
We're not really changing the large-scale solar facility. It still will be a conditional use process that has to go through agriculture. And so that one, really, you'll still see those type of larger scale projects or facilities will still have to go through a case-by-case conditional use application process. So that one's not going to get eliminated from the list of cases that you'll be hearing. We felt years ago when we started doing the large-scale solar facilities that it was appropriate to do in the agricultural areas and not necessarily in our more valuable industrial zone property, but that we still needed a ability to review them on a case-by-case basis, and the use of the conditional use tool was the best way to do that.
Picking one of the examples at the left end that has 8, the modified development standards, which are a lot of them, our standards are outdated. So under ZOMOD, there will be less of a need to ask for an exception to a standard because the standards are going to be more in line with what we actually want to see on the ground. And I'll say to that point, even for the past several years, when we see a case, you'll often see exceptions in there because we're actually trying to mold it to match what we think ZOMOD will be, because that's what we want the future of Chesterfield to be. So those types, those 8 examples won't all go away, but they'll be reduced because the standards are built in rather than being an exception.
So it's kind of like a dog to a bone for a moment. So explain to me, like, business from the home. How is that going to be different in ZOMOD?
We still have a list of acceptable businesses from the home. What we were trying to do within ZOMOD was try to eliminate some of the conflicts with neighbors in reference to, say, the number of trucks or trailers that maybe were involved with a particular site. But for the idea where a music teacher or somebody, tax accountant, somebody that was still trying to work out of the house, that would still be available by right. As long as they were meeting certain restrictions, they could still go forward with those type of uses. I think one of the better examples of things that will go away, it would be, in the past, we've never had a mixed-use zoning district before. And the idea within some of our corridors where we've got some older shopping centers and so forth, the idea of converting half of those into some sort of living conditions, residential development, having some size down retail and maybe some use of office all in the same parcel was not an option we could do without doing a complicated CUPD. And now we're going to have an example, we'll have a new tool in that toolbox of MU, mixed use, that we could do. And as long as they're following the requirements and standards that we have built into ZOMOD for mixed use, that should be a much simpler and quicker process for them to go through a zoning. They'll still have to do the zoning case, but it won't take a year and a half to kind of do it all. And so those type of things might be a more simpler exercise for both the developer and for the staff, definitely, and for the Planning Commission and the board to kind of review and approve.
So I know when Jim and I did our review with staff and our 2x2s, we had talked about those ones that they get a 2-year approval and they have to come back again.
Right.
And so one of the ways that we talked about possibly reducing the burden on us and having them go through the whole process again is to maybe have the BZA handle their renewals instead of, so I think that's something that might take some of those numbers out of there also, having to do renewals and, continuing a permit and checking in on people. But if they get a special use permit for like a daycare center and they have to come back in 2 years or things like that. So I think that applies a lot to some of these uses. Like even with your sawmill, I mean, that's another one. I mean, if the community continues to support it, then, that should be automatically renewed, like maybe with the BZA, just a meeting with them or something.
Is that something that's currently in the new ZOMOD, what Jessica is describing?
That's an item we're still working through. I think in Ms. Schneider's specific example that they come through zoning, they get their approval, but there's a sunset clause on there that maybe the subsequent approval can be BZA as long as the initial one still goes through the full Planning Commission and board process. So we're working on kind of a hybrid to get some of it to the BZA, but we also don't want to risk putting too much to the BZA, because quite frankly, that's not as public of a process. So we do want to make sure that we're still using our bodies to vet the initial request.
So whatever we're going to be signing off in September or October, whenever it gets signed off, that element will be in ZOMAD?
We're,
Right now, that's the plan,
like
but we're
Frank's-
still taking it out to the community. I mean, we're still having our community meetings, and there's a few items like that even staff and the planning commission, we're still talking through those. Because
Okay.
we've debated some others also going to the BZA, like some of the types of home businesses, but we're going to be very conservative there. We're only going to move to the BZA the cases that we're confident will still get the proper attention that is needed, and try to keep, not that I want to put work on staff for you, but a lot of those I feel need to stay with us because they need to stay as publicly available as possible.
All right, couple things. If citizens were to say that there's no citizens on the ZOMOD committee, based on what you said, first off, the group that's working on this, the working group, it does have at least one citizen that I know of that is not a realtor or a developer or anything of that nature. So we do have people representing the community on that, as well as the Committee on the Future, which is 100% represented by, well, there may be somebody on that committee that has some tie to something, but in general, that's pretty much a lay citizens group as well, correct?
Correct. We went for a mix. There are some that are in the professional industries, whether it's land use or development. We have some that are residents who aren't in that world at all. We have some people that don't live in Chesterfield, but they're serving on the committee because they've had experience in other municipalities. And to your point, the Committee on the Future, that's 10 citizens, 2 per district, representing their districts as citizens. So we tried to make it, again, as diverse and a spread of opinions and backgrounds as we could.
I just wanted to make that point because there's a lot of chatter in the community that none of the citizens were included in this, and that it was all done in the secret back rooms between the planning staff and the development community, which is not the case. And on top of that, as you said, we've had 4 out of 5 district meetings that all the citizens were invited to come and put in input. And I know from at least one citizen that said they put in some input and they were happy to see that it was received well, and they were just a citizen. They were not somebody that was a professional in the industry. So I just want to make sure that that's out there, because there's definitely a lot of chatter in the community that that's not the case.
yeah.
Thank you.
We do have a pretty decent mix, I think, on the advisory committee, but we've also been meeting all along with special interest groups or chamber or MBA and other groups, HOAs and so forth. And those meetings are advisory too. They may not be part of the, official advisory committee, but we're listening to the comments that they're making and trying to incorporate some of those ideas into the 3rd or 4th draft of ZOMOD as we go forward.
And then on multifamily, where you showed 50% multifamily and 50% for sale, that multifamily, though, would include, if there's condo units that are for sale, they'd be in the multi-unit.
That's true.
Or the multifamily. So we actually have more than 50% of the units that were approved that are for sale product. I don't know what the exact number is.
Yeah.
But I know that there is some for sale product in the multifamily category that would then tip it over 50%.
Right. A condo
So-
case coming in today would be considered multifamily
Right.
and therefore show up in that blue 50%.
But it could be a for sale product
Correct.
showing up in that.
Yes,
I just
sir.
wanted to make that point.
And there also are some age restricted, and there are some assisted living, memory care, those types of residences.
That are also included in the multifamily.
Yeah, correct.
So it's not just for rent apartments that category makes up. That's what I wanted to.
Actually, that
Clarify.
number's down from previous years,
And
pretty significantly.
the last question I have for you, which Mr. Carroll touched to a certain extent, but there are citizens in the community that advocate to do the comp plan first and then the zoning ordinance. And I don't know how you do a comp plan to include categories that don't currently exist that you would then, through ZOMOD, have become available, and then I'd have to go back and redo your comprehensive plan again anyway. So just wanted to get your comments on why you believe we need to do the ZOMOD ordinance first and then the comp plan versus the other way.
So I would say it's not linear, it's circular. We're constantly updating both. We've done a countless comprehensive plan amendments in the last, just in the last 6 years I've been serving. And we've done plenty of ordinance amendments as well. So it's not a linear process by any stretch of the imagination. It is a constant living document, and both need to keep complementing each other. So every time you update one, you are going to then complement it by updating the other. So we're doing both constantly.
The goal,
But would it make sense to do the comp plan first when you don't have the new zoning districts?
So we did a massive comprehensive plan update.
2019, we did the
Okay.
amendment to, a significant amendment to the comprehensive plan. And that was really the trigger for when we started asking you all for, funding and the opportunity to move forward with ZOMOD. But your point is well made that the comprehensive plan language needs to match up with the zoning ordinance. And it really doesn't do that very well, and the idea of getting those new tools in the toolbox established within ZOMOD so that you know how development could be approved, such as the mixed-use zoning district, then it's up to the comprehensive plan amendments and the future land use plan that gets developed out of that, and you all as to where is that appropriate to put a mixed-use development. But you've at least got that tool in your toolbox at that point to do it right. That's the part of ZOMOD that it's hard for us to explain, but you do have to have that. The other analogy I would make is, if you come to a three-way intersection, you're going to look both left and right before you move forward. The comprehensive plan's maybe to the left and the ZOMOD's to the right. So you have to look both ways before you move forward with your direction. So which comes first? I mean, I think you need to have both talking to each other and interacting well. And we felt fixing the ZOMOD, the zoning ordinance with ZOMOD was the first step we needed to make.
Well,
Thank you.
first step, now, I do want to, and I know it's kind of been said, but in 2019, a new comprehensive plan was adopted. So you could argue that was step one at that part of the cycle. And we initiated ZOMOD formally in 2020, but it was approved in 19. So it really was one then the other, just this other has taken 5-6 years. So it doesn't feel like it's step two, but it is if you go all the way back to 2019.
But to your point, you're going to have to do the dance anyways because you're going to have to go back and update it once ZOMOD is complete.
And that's why you saw, 25 and 26 are now we're going to go back and do the comprehensive plan again. It's a never-ending job. We're going to keep you busy.
I just think that's important because there's a lot of chatter about that in the community as well. Does the chicken or the egg come first? And just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, look, there's a reason why I brought this up. I don't want, going back to that slide we looked at, I didn't want the presentation to be to the community that by changing ZOMOD, we don't need to do zoning cases for these things anymore. It's not true. We're going to have to do zoning cases for them. But what it is going to do, like Mr. Gillies talked about with the mixed-use community, it will actually have an option in there for someone to do a mixed-use community, which doesn't exist, which means they can do straight zoning instead of having to go through a conditional use permit. And the thing that I like about this is that if there is something that is designated in straight zoning and someone looks at that parcel and says, I'd like to develop it, then they will know what they can actually do based on what is in the comprehensive plan and what ZOMOD says. If they want to go outside the scope of that, then they have to file a conditional use permit to do so. And I think that at that point, after we've gone through this whole process, I actually think if they have to go to the conditional use permit and a future board looks at it and says, I don't agree with what you want to put on that, they can get denied. But right now, what we've been doing, conditional use, just as an example, someone does something in Midlothian, and Midlothian, not to pick on you, Mark, but they say, well, you allowed those setbacks in Midlothian, it was a conditional use, now I want the setbacks in Matoka. And we may look at that parcel and say, I don't think those setbacks work for that. I don't want to do that there. And they go, well, you already allowed it over there, why can't I do it? And so it puts you in a position of, so if you do say no, you could get sued, and they could argue, you had no reason to design my zoning case because the same thing was approved in Midlothian already. So by setting standards, we can hold people accountable, which is, I think, what this whole go is trying to do. It's not going to take away public input. And the other misnomer that's out there that I want to clear up, and I hope I'm right on this, and if I'm not, we're going to fix it, is that we're not going to go back and look at every single zoning case that's been approved in Chesterfield County before and say, now we're going to change your zoning case to what we believe it should be. Those cases that were approved before, that people paid for, that went through the public process, will continue to be what they were zoned for. If they want to change it, they'll have to bring it back forward, because they may look at it and go, I got it zoned for this, but now that this new zoning is created, maybe I want to do a mixed-use thing, so maybe I need to bring a case forward for that. But they still have to go through the process to do it, which means the public process that you explained earlier about community meetings, the planning commission, the public meeting at the planning commission, and then the public meeting at the board of supervisors, and the online opportunity for people to give input will still exist. Because people are believing right now that we're just going to go rubber stamp, we're going to change everything to this. And that's not the case, right?
Correct.
Wanted to make sure we get that clarification, because there are people out there saying different, and they're wrong.
That's a great point, Mr. Carroll. When do we anticipate doing the next comprehensive plan?
So I'll flip us to this slide. So we're already starting to work on not a full comprehensive plan rewrite, but we are going to redo the subdivision ordinance or an amendment to it immediately so that it is in line with ZOMOD. And then down at the bottom, chapters 9, 10, and 13, those are the three that we've identified that need to be updated ASAP to align them with ZOMOD. So those four items really right on the heels of ZOMOD. In fact, that's part of why we are, once the board approves ZOMOD, it's not going to immediately go into effect. It's going to be approved and then adopted at a later date to allow us a few months to hopefully get these queued up so that once the ZOMOD is actually enacted, all of this is in place so everything is cohesive and working together.
The Chapter 10 amendment to the land use plan this time around for 25 is to really make sure that the relabeling and renaming of what we're using in ZOMOD will match up with the comprehensive plan's Chapter 10 language. Like, so we're speaking French or English and English. We're speaking the same language within that. The point that Mr. Carroll brought up earlier of, the larger 20-year vision of what parts of the county should be considered possibly a different land use is a heavier lift, and that will be another review and amendment to the comprehensive plan and to Chapter 10 and all the chapters, probably in 26 or 27. So we have plans to start that, but we can only do one thing well at a time. We want to get ZOMOD finished first and make sure all that fits together, and then take a look at the longer vision of Chesterfield County and what you all want to see for the next 20 years.
Plus, while I really want ZOMOD to be approved, we can't presume it will be. We cannot be presumptuous and say, well, the board's going to approve it this year, so now we're already queuing up the next items. We need to wait until you like ZOMOD and feel it is ready.
Go ahead.
And just so the community understands that when a comprehensive plan update is done, it requires community meetings.
Oh, yes.
For people to have an opportunity to come out and see what's proposed, ask questions, look at parcels, whether they want to look at their own parcel and say, what's going to be a proposed use for mine, have all the public input, and then it has to go through the whole approval process.
Absolutely.
So it's not like we're going to go in a back room and go, ooh, let's do this, and not tell anybody, right?
Absolutely. You know,
Thanks.
it's a community effort.
And I'll give a real-world example. I got into this world because of the Midlothian Community Special Area Plan. That's how I got involved when that public outreach for that went to the Chamber and the Midlothian Business Alliance. And at that point, I had no idea what a planning commission was, and somehow I'm here anyway.
Dr. Case.
Just to clarify, for the comprehensive plan updates, it's Chapter 10 and 13 are much more aligned to the ZOMOD. Your Chapter 9 is a little more autonomous. In fact, we're going through the request for public hearing on consent today for a May public hearing. That is almost a standalone chapter. And to Dr. Miller's point, too, when we talk about items like solar, it's not as if we've never addressed solar before. You know, even during Mr. Petroski's time, we actually created a very in-depth solar ordinance that actually became a model for that and the siting agreements that followed. So while you know what you saw up there, you know that's why it's not necessarily being changed much, because we spend so much time with you and the public just in recent years. I just want to make those clarifications, sir.
And just my last point, I believe it was 302 inquiries came in saying, I might like to do this, what can I do with my property? Only 27% of those made it all the way to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and only 26% of those made it to an approval. So it's really closer to a quarter of all of the requests that come into the county for things that I may want to do, or how can I do this, and they find out they can't through the process. That 302 is whittled down to 160, whittled down to 103, that was whittled down to 82, that was whittled down to 79 that were approved. That's 26%. That is not approving everything that people want to do. I just wanted to make that point as well. We've kept you a lot longer than you were expecting. We thank you for your patience with our questions and appreciate your answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.